The mother that's codependent on the narcissistic husband, codependent wife. This is the classic. I'm just giving you the textbook case. Becomes the narcissistic mother. Live, we are going live. Hello, beautiful people of the social media universe. I don't know how you ended up in my universe, in my container, but I want to say welcome. Thank you for being here. We are broadcasting live, currently, I guess, recording. So if you're watching the recording, what's up? Say replay. We are live on Clubhouse, simultaneously, as you see, broadcasting live on Facebook in my trigger-proof community that eventually becomes my podcast and my YouTube channel, which, by the way, great news. It's been a while since I've been here because I thought I lost my YouTube channel, and it turned out to be a hacker. I made up all sorts of stories, and of course, YouTube doesn't have a call center where you can talk to somebody, so it's all a bunch of support tickets and praying, and it was really disheartening. Here I am talking about nervous system regulation and healing, and I'm in a full-blown kind of sense of panic at the thought of 15 years of my life's work just gone, poof, gone, and there's no explanation. And so I'm really glad to be back on YouTube. So hello. And I thought I'd have to start all over, but here I am. And it had been a while since I've come in to do a Facebook Live and a Clubhouse room, but this topic was way too important for me to ignore. So here I am. And I'm here to answer some questions for those of you jumping in on Clubhouse. What's up? Welcome. If you've never met me before, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Nima Rahmany, although the doctor part, it comes from being a chiropractor for 20 years, which I retired officially last year. Even though I'll always be a chiropractor in my heart, this is something that it's part of who I am as a practitioner, helping people heal. And what I've learned as a chiropractor in the last 20 years is that most people coming in to see me were actually dealing with stress-related disorders. And when because I got to know people, I'm kind of like, my personality type is that I love people. I love getting to know people and understanding people. And so I would see patterns with certain people with coming in with chronic pains, chronic illnesses, this pattern of chronic fatigue, being tied into dysfunctional relationship dynamics of all things. And it wasn't until I went through my divorce and then a series of 9 kind of failed relationships after that, where it had me kind of looking in my own, inside my own mind and my own heart, understanding my own traumas of why I kept repeating the same relationship patterns again and again and again, why no matter how much personal development work I did, I couldn't release myself from the clutches of this painful, emotionally painful anxiety that wouldn't go away no matter who I was dating, or if I was single, it would still be there. If I was dating, it would still be there. It didn't matter which partner I was with, and it didn't matter how much money I made. So it was nothing external. And I had tried so many things to kind of understand this entrepreneurial anxiety. And I knew that it was tied in a very weird way to my relationship dynamics. And it turned out on my own search to figure it all out after my last relationship just blew up in my face, there was a weird unholy union between anxiety, between pain, emotional pain, chronic fatigue, chronic illness, and early childhood adversity, early childhood attachment wounding with mom and dad. And so I did an attachment. So from there, when I kind of put the pieces together, I took a break from helping anyone. It was several years ago. I said, I'm not going to be Dr. Nima. I'm just going to work on me, because there's a common denominator that's happening in all these relationship dynamics, and it seems to be me. And instead of pointing the finger and blaming those other crazy people out there, maybe it's time to look inside and see what I can own. And holy crap, what I learned, first of all, I discovered that my attachment style is insecure avoidant. So I had an insecure avoidant attachment style, which basically meant that I followed a predictable pattern in relational dynamics, which is really have this deep desire to connect with somebody, but it feels terrifying when intimacy comes close. So I push away any chances of somebody, it really kind of going somewhere. And I would unconsciously, in my mind, consciously, I said, I really want to find the one. But my unconscious was saying, the one is not safe, because the one might leave you and leave you very, very sad and lonely. So you might as well find people that are wounded birds that you can rescue, so you don't have to worry about them leaving. And you could be super duper important and then keep an emotional distance, but then stay relevant, and then play this little cat and mouse game of push-pull dynamics in my relationships, which I now understand to be trauma bonds. So it all started with me understanding my attachment style. That's why if you haven't learned your attachment style yet, that's what I really recommend that you do. And if you wonder what yours is, you can just go onto my Instagram at Dr. Nima, just the link in the bio, and it says attachment style, and just go ahead and put your information there. You're going to get an email with a video that describes to you pretty much, in a lot of cases, your whole life story. I mean, the emails that I get back from people are like, holy crap, you just pretty much explained my entire life. You described me to a T. It was spot on. It's scary. Are you following me? That kind of thing. And the answer to that is no, I'm not following you, but your nervous system is very predictable. As a human being, nothing that you experience, even anxiety, is something about something wrong with you. And that was one of the key features that I had to understand in order for me to heal it, is to really get a good idea of what healing is. So I'm going to talk about that. And that's why I love talking about that and teaching my cycle breaker community about how to stop the cycle that you were born into from unresolved attachment wounds that create these insecure attachment dynamics between you and your partner. And then unfortunately, if we don't resolve that, then we have families with the same patterns and these unhealthy attachment dynamics in our relationships then unconsciously get passed down to children. So let me give you an example. If you are, you teeter towards codependency, a lot of the people who watch my content are feeling like they're stuck in these trauma bonds that are codependent type of dynamics. Well, if you can relate to that, what happens is the codependency you experience in your relationship with your partner, when you have children under that kind of energetic dynamic, under that family system, the code, for example, I'm going to just use the most common example that I see, the codependent mother, the mother that's codependent on the narcissistic husband, codependent wife, this is the classic, I'm just giving you the textbook case, becomes the narcissistic mother, because the emotional deadness that you experience in your relationship because of that attachment trauma within you and your partner, because of unresolved attachment wounds from mom and dad, which you both are acting out and playing out through no fault of your own, then unconsciously, because of that dynamic between mom and dad, that dynamic gets played out, and a child doesn't feel seen, doesn't feel heard, experiences mother and father as emotionally absent, emotionally distant, which I did, and then add in all the other traumas that you can experience, the capital T traumas with physical violence, with sexual abuse, that kind of thing. These are the capital T, big T traumas. But then also there's the little t traumas, of being parented with shame, of extreme, like fundamentalist religious upbringing that scared the ever-loving shit out of you that you were going to hell because you're a sinner. And then you're constantly just seeing yourself as like a pathetic, like horrible human being and unworthy and all that stuff. That's kind of the little t traumas. That's death by a million paper cuts. There's the emotional abuse. There's all sorts of experiences in childhood that we grow up in because of having parents that just don't have a secure attachment with one another. And that lack of safety that a child feels, or the experience of not actually having parents that were present for you, or feeling like you constantly had to perform in order to be lovable. You had to perform. You had to be the good girl, be the good boy. You had to abandon yourself in order to feel worthy of love. That love was conditional, based on a performance, based on you having to meet the emotional needs of mom and dad, or make mom and dad, had problems with alcohol or drug abuse, and you had to kind of clean up after them constantly, and you're only 8 years old, and had that experience of constantly having to abandon yourself to meet the emotional needs or the physical needs of a parent with mental health issues. So these early experiences of adversity in children, even things that I haven't even mentioned, surgeries, near-death experiences, drownings, there is a plethora of things that you as a child going through can take on in your system that is too much, too fast, too soon, that causes us to dissociate, causes our little nervous systems to get stuck with that survival stress energy. And without really understanding the mechanism behind this, without really understanding the nervous system and how it adapts to certain stressors, how it adapts to noises, how it adapts to facial expressions and a sense of presence. I mean, what kind of unicorn parents really understand this stuff, right? What kind of parents really are trauma-informed, understanding how the nervous system works and what's good and what's not appropriate for the nervous system. I'm throwing all of these little examples here, not to tell you that you're being a bad parent, not to blame your parents that they were shitty parents. Nobody likes to feel like they're shitty parents. We all go into this. I mean, I have an 18-month-old. He's almost 19 months now at the recording of this. I didn't go into this while he was cooking in Diana's womb. We didn't look at each other and say, you know what, I really hope to fuck this thing up. I really hope to be the shittiest dad that I can be. No, nobody goes into this with that in mind. In fact, we all go into probably the most difficult job that we can take on, which is parenting. We go in with the hopes, with the vision of actually doing as good of a job as we possibly can, not making the same mistakes that our parents did, without their understanding, with their unconscious parenting, with what they know now. I mean, so many things we know now that didn't know back in the time when I was growing up. For example, did you know the whole CIO, cry it out method? The cry it out method in and of itself, to have a child with an immature nervous system, to leave them be with the door closed while they're in terror, screaming and crying, mommy, mommy, because a pediatrician, I think they call it the Ferber method. This is widely practiced, and still some pediatricians still to this day, they haven't caught up with the research. That is a trauma to the nervous system of the child. The child then learns that they can't trust that their emotions, their experiences, they're crying out for help, for co-regulation, help me regulate myself, will not be met with a secure attachment. So the child's nervous system then learns that it's not really, my emotions don't matter. I'm on my own, and that there's a mistrust there's kind of like a defensive detachment with our parents. And I mean, that in and of itself is not a travesty, as long as, the child grows with pretty secure attachment afterwards. And what does that even mean? Because, what parent has ever learned how to attach securely with their children? What parent has ever learned how to attach securely within themselves? Like, what does that even mean? If we can give them secure attachment after that, then it's not the worst thing in the world. But you have that cry it out method that you and I probably were raised in, and probably you might have even raised your children in that way, adding on to the capital T traumas plus the little t traumas. It's no wonder why, adding on all of the like surgeries and all these experiences of adversity that are trapped and stored in our nervous system, sometimes before we've even had the language to describe it. What was your, when you were developing in utero, what was the relationship like with your parents? Between your mom and dad? Did your mom know that your dad was there? Did you even have an invitation to exist? These things get stored into our nervous systems, and they get activated throughout our lives again and again and again. And nowhere had I grown up really learning and understanding how to manage that, how to understand that, how to come to terms with it, and to learn how to heal that. Because if we don't, what happens is these unresolved attachment traumas, they inform the partnerships that we get involved in. If you wonder, God, it was like love at first sight. Why did I choose? It seemed like love at first sight. They were like soulmates, right? And then afterwards you become cellmates. How did I not see that one coming? Well, oftentimes these extreme, like powerful love at first sight chemistry, fireworks when you first meet somebody and you say, this person, they're my soulmate, often is a trauma bond that we're unaware of. It's both of us have this incomplete wound that's so similar with our primary attachments that you mirror them perfectly. That's why later on it's like I was just like marrying my dad. I felt like I was marrying my mother all over again. And there's a weird twisted dance that our unresolved traumas seek those bonds to bond to from our early attachments to have completion. It's our twisted way of healing, of hopefully healing, but nobody gives us the tools in order to do it. So we end up repeating these patterns. At least that's what I did. So the reason why I love talking about this is because I was going through that whole experience, and anxiety was one of my biggest symptoms that led me into this work. And after doing this work and really shifting my inner world, the choices of who I was dating and who I saw as attractive and who I was pulled towards completely changed. And so I was able to heal from my trauma bond and then create a secure relationship. And now I have this amazing family that wasn't available to me before I did this work. And now that I do have this available, and I have seen my life transform with it, this is now why I love teaching what I teach, and why it's so important to me is because by understanding the nervous system, by understanding what's happening, I'm able to now parent my son in a way where safety is his experience. And especially the most important time is the first 3 years of life, because that's when our nervous systems are literally being formed. And so I know the greatest gift that I can give my son is a secure relationship that I have with his mother. so that when she is present and attuned to him, like right now, she's with him right now as I'm talking to you, he feels a secure attachment with her because she feels safe in my relationship with her. So it all kind of trickles down, mom and dad. I'm not saying this is all mom's fault. Dads, partners, you have a huge role as well to play in this experience, because you can actually help break that cycle when you take on the healing work. So the reason why I'm having this conversation with you is we have been getting a litany of people in our community having challenges with their teenagers, their children, with anxiety, with depression. And invariably I get a mother saying, can you please help my son? Can my son do your program? Can my son do your work? And you have this classic case of a 14-year-old, 15-year-old who's dealing with behavioral issues, who's dealing with anxiety issues, who's dealing with mental health, depression. They're checked out, they're dissociated, they're anxious all the time. Maybe they're dealing with an addiction. And invariably it's a behavioral issue, or they're acting out sexually. And this is what happens, what I notice is that when the behavioral issue becomes so severe where the parent then all of a sudden feels shame, that's when they're going to do something. That's when they're usually like, okay, we have to do something now. It's like a wake-up call, and normally it's the parent reaching out saying, can you fix their behavior? Can you fix their behavior? Can you fix their depression? It's unacceptable. Can you fix it? And what I'm about to share with you is not a very popular answer. In fact, I might get some hate mail for this. I'm okay with that. I'm here to share with you the truth and what actually works to resolve the outcome, because everybody wants to have a family life experience where they feel safe. They create a experience of safety for the kids. The kids feel a profound sense of confidence in themselves, confidence in their own truth, in their own beliefs, in their own vision, in what they want to create in their lives, and a very strong sense of self. Everybody wants to raise their children with that, because if we don't, we don't do the work necessary to facilitate that happening, life sucks. Because you can only, my brother said this, he's got 2 kids, and he said this, and I don't usually quote my twin brother, but he said something very profound. He said, you can only be as happy as your most unhappy child. Let me say that again. He told me this, and this is before I had kids. He has 2 kids older. Mine is 18 months. He's got 2 kids one is like 5 and the other one's 8 at this time. He said, you can only be as happy as your most unhappy child. And I was like, wow, that's pretty big. So it lends to the awareness that we would do anything it takes to help our children, develop that sense of adaptability, a sense of, I got this, a sense of self-confidence, a sense of self-worth, a sense of resiliency through adversities of life. Being a teenager is hard. You remember what it was like. I remember, it wasn't easy at all. And I remember, driving my parents crazy as well, and having this experience where I didn't feel understood by them. In fact, I still don't feel understood by them. They didn't understand or know how to create an experience where their children both felt understood. It was backwards. It was our duty to understand them, which was kind of a cultural thing, right? And so what to do with a kid when they're struggling. My name is Dr. Nima Rahmany, and you've been listening to the Trigger Proof, designed to teach you the most important skill necessary for a dramatically changing world, which is nervous system regulation. And becoming trigger proof doesn't mean trigger less. It means learning how to regulate ourselves to bring us back to center so that we can then be governed by our purpose rather than from our wounds. Anytime there's reactivity, there's a wound. And if you're curious and inspired to learn more, join us at Breathwork and Badassery or the overview experience. There's a difference between listening to a podcast and actually showing up live and doing the work with a badass community who's all about breaking cycles of intergenerational trauma. It didn't start with you, but it can end with you if you're willing to do the work. See you at the next perfect time. Often the first thing that you'll do is, oh my gosh, can I send them to a shrink? I got to send them to a counselor. And often, I'm going to say this isn't very popular for me to say. Often, I'm not saying everybody, but I want you to look out for this, even though, it's going to trigger some mom guilt or dad guilt when I say this, and this isn't to shame you. Oftentimes when we send our children to therapists, it's because they're having behavioral issues that we can't tolerate and we don't know how to regulate ourselves through for various reasons. It triggers our shame. It triggers our, holy shit, I'm a bad parent. And what I noticed with parents is that there's this unconscious kind of desire for them to have a label. Oh, thank God they have ADD. Thank God the doctor said they have general anxiety disorder. Thank God I know what it is. So it's kind of like, oh, okay, good. It wasn't me. There's this little voice I can hear when parents tell me. I can see right through it. It's like, oh, they've got this thing because it's not me as a parent, right? And please this isn't a blaming the parent issue. We can have two things be true at the same time. I want you to humor me here and really kind of pay attention to what I'm trying to say here, because this isn't to invalidate you as a parent. This isn't to shame you or guilt you, but this is to have the conversation of trauma, unresolved childhood trauma, and the insidious nature of trauma, so that you understand this is not your fault. This is definitely not about the word fault, and blame needs to be thrown out the window when we are dealing with trauma, because we're talking about something that has been going on for generations, that gets passed down. And when a parent doesn't resolve their attachment traumas, unconsciously, without a doubt, it gets passed down to the children. For example, a classic one I can just throw out there is religious trauma, spiritual trauma, when you are born with the idea that, you're going to hell if you don't, follow this, or if you do this, then you're going to hell. It's with the right intention that the parent wants to raise a child with some spiritual morals and idealisms. That's without a doubt all the right intentions. But when you're not trauma informed, the way that it lands on the child is a small t trauma. It's this sense of shame. It's this sense of unworthiness. It's the sense of your love is conditional based upon you performing these things. And it teaches the child doesn't end up hating the parents at the beginning. The child ends up hating themselves. So self-hate, there's such a huge correlation I see between self-hate and fundamentalist religion. It's kind of like the child is saying, I'm going to hate myself so that I can protect myself from being hated by, the church, the community, my parents. And it's this twisted dance with the small t trauma. And this isn't to blame anybody. This is really to help educate you on being more trauma informed. So this is one little insidious way how your unresolved shame and regrets with your own sexuality, for example, with your own spirituality, unconsciously gets downloaded onto children. And the child then learns, in order for me to be safe, I must abandon myself. This is, and take on this new character, to put on this mask and become this good person. And so you see there's a fracture from the self that happens. And this is the birth of anxiety. This is, well, other than the birth trauma, other than all of the other things that can happen, if I guarantee you right now in the Ukraine with war happening, this lack of safety, this arguments, divorce as a child, divorce between parents at a young age, all of a sudden the child has to experience a lack of safety. In my case, I was separated from my mother and brother at the age of 2 for 3 months. For 3 months, my nervous system, before I was even verbal, had the experience of a lack of safety. And this has been carried in my body, and I didn't even realize it until my first breath work event, where it all came out. Even though I had done tons of personal development, it was a revelation for me until I went into the body to really learn how to access this. So this first part of this conversation is really to help you understand the insidious nature of trauma. Because if we don't understand the insidious nature of trauma itself, and it's not really about what happened to us. Trauma is not about what happened to us, but how we experience an overwhelm of emotions that were not brought back down. We're not taught how to move through and process with regulation, with a completion, with a sense of return back into balance, with a sense of repair. Ruptures and arguments that aren't taught how to repair. I mean, I'm going to screw up a lot with raising my son. The cool part about it is that I understand the nervous system and repair right now. But if you were raised having conflict in the family dynamic, but not taught how to repair, then, these attachments are unresolved and they're sitting in your nervous system. And this is where anxiety comes from. This is where mental health issues come from. And so you might be thinking, oh shit, my kids are in their 20s. And this is what every single one of our students in our program say. Oh, fuck, I fucked up my kids. I have fucked up my kids. What do I do? Oh, it's too late now. Oh my God, I'm beating myself up now. It's too late. Forget it. It's too late. And they use that as an excuse to not start their own trauma healing work. But I got to ask you this question. If you can resonate with that, the invitation that I have for you is to say, let's say you're 40 years old. Maybe you're older, but let's say you were 40 years old and you had parents that are alive at the time, who are in their 70s, let's say. And they started taking on their healing work and were able to put pieces together and get to a place of understanding within themselves so that they can come back to you while you're in your 40s and have a really frank, earnest, heart-to-heart conversation about some of your experiences and create a space where you can feel seen and heard, even in your 40s. Would that have made a difference for you? You goddamn right it would have. I'm 46 at the recording of this right now. My heart would melt and I would fall into a pit of tears if my parents had the capacity to be able to hold space and listen while I explained to them some of these things and really learned how to repair, right? And they're in their 70s. They're kind of like had said, nah, I don't want to learn anything, right? They use the same excuses. So if you're wondering, oh, it's too late for me, I fucked up my kids, they're already dealing with anxiety, what do? I just want to pawn them off to a shrink. Oftentimes, pawning them off to a shrink is the biggest form of gaslighting, invalidating their experience. Many of our students actually remember having anxiety problems, and their parents were like, oh, fuck, there's something wrong with you. Let's send you to a shrink, which then reinforced that there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. And when we regress them, we realize when we did their healing work, when they were 12, when they were 8, they realized there was nothing wrong with them. They just saw things differently than the current family system. They had different values. They had different desires. They had different ways of viewing the world. Maybe they were in a family of engineers and scientists, and this one was like a creative, just loved to dance and paint. But because of that system, it was frowned upon because, like, if you were a Persian and you were a creative, you were told, just fuck that noise. Go into engineering. Don't waste your time as a painter or a creator. That's bullshit. It's not going to get you anything. So it had all the right intentions, but the child then learns that their creative self, their values, their desires, who they are at their core is not lovable, is not acceptable. And this is a form of invalidation. So a lot of child psychology therapy with all the right intention, with the parents skipping out on these 3 steps that I want to share with you, is not helping the child. And the way that we help the children in our community is by breaking the cycle within the family system. And I want to show you how this has happened, where one of our students, Heidi, was having a challenge with her 14-year-old who was just behavioral issues, acting out in school, this close to getting kicked out. And finally, I mean, there was problems before, but once it got to that level, that's when she reached out to me, because she was a former graduate of our programs. And she says, could you help my son? I'm just this close to throwing money at it and sending him to a counselor. And I said, come on, Heidi, you know exactly how this works. And she's like, fuck, okay. And so without him doing any counseling, she jumped in and did the work and did these things I'm about to share. And within a few months, not only had his grades transformed, their relationship completely transformed, his behavior completely changed, and he was now going from like wanting to be kicked out, wanting almost this close to being expelled, then has now enrolled in a high school program that's like elite, with like super duper creative, and is totally jazzed up and inspired. And he didn't do any work. And so what are the principles that we go through in order to help our students who are really committed to being cycle breakers heal? And so if you're on what's it called? Clubhouse, you can jump into Facebook, my Facebook community right now, and watch this, because I'm doing a live right now, and I have my little notepad that I have. It's a little toy that I have that's really helpful, that you might want to write stuff down. So number 1 is, how do you help your kid who's struggling with mental health issues? How do you help them? And it's not what you think. So this isn't kind of like the easy way out type of answer. This is actually healing. And the first part is to understand the nervous system. Understand the nervous system. Understand your nervous system, the nervous system, and specifically your nervous system. Critical. Why? Well, because once you really understand the nervous system and become trauma informed, you realize that kids aren't bad kids. Kids aren't anxious. Anxiety doesn't even exist. Depression doesn't even exist. They're just various states of the autonomic nervous system under survival stress. That's every behavioral issue. This is when I learned what I learned that completely radically shifted my relationship with myself, and the shame and the guilt that I'd been carrying about how I'd shown up in relationships, was that there's nothing wrong with you. All behavioral challenges, all behavior is a solution to unresolved stress, unresolved survival stress in the system. So you have an alarm. You have an alarm going on, and whether you're picking at your skin or cutting or pulling out your hair or not eating because you're counting calories or binging and purging or whatever behavioral stuff that you do, or acting out sexually, or ADHD, or not able to sit still, or getting into arguments or getting into rage, it's not because you're a bad kid. It's because you are trying to find some sort of avenue to release this unresolved survival stress in your body. Now, why would it be there? Well, unresolved trauma. Why is that child holding on to so much survival stress? Now, please understand, this isn't to blame you as a parent. I get the hate mail. Are you blaming parents and we're doing it? No, not blaming you. We need to have the conversation outside of the context of blame and inside of the context of healing and understanding and compassion, because this isn't your fault. You didn't know because you didn't understand your nervous system growing up. Nobody taught you how to self-assess and self-regulate your various states of the autonomic nervous system. Without understanding this, we are like walking through life without a map, without a kind of barometer of how we're feeling and what we should do with our emotions. We don't know what to do with our own emotions. How the hell are we going to know how to help a child work through their big emotions? If I haven't worked through my emotions and my traumas, when my son experiences what I have incomplete within myself, I won't be able to hold myself together. And my dysregulation, and I'm a kind of like a, larger than life type of person, like my mother is, that extreme moodiness and activation energy I was receiving as a child, she couldn't sit still for 2 seconds. That downloaded onto me. Her lack of safety was downloaded all to me through no fault of her own. God love her. She's a wonderful human being. Her unresolved attachment traumas had no choice but to get downloaded onto me. And my unresolved attachment traumas have no choice but to indirectly get downloaded onto him. Why? Because I don't understand my nervous system. Because I don't know how to self-assess. I don't know how to, when my son is crying because he's teething, and that brings up all, the loud noise brings up when my dad gets angry with me, and I then regress and be a child, then I'm not able to be there for my son. I download my wounds onto him. I react to his emotions. How does that make him feel? He then has to abandon himself in order to feel safe with me. And now I've created a culture of a lack of safety within the dynamic, because I assume that parenting is a role, because that's what my parents taught me. Parenting is not a role. It's a relationship. And if I don't understand my nervous system, then I won't understand my son's nervous system, and I won't be able to do what my job is as a parent, which is to help him regulate his little immature nervous system that has no clue how to regulate. How am I going to help him if he can't do it himself, if I can't do it for myself? So the first part is to really maximize the understanding of the nervous system. That's why in all of our trainings, that's why in breathwork and badassery at the overview experience, that's the first thing we start with. Once you get this, when you get this right, all of a sudden, you stop judging yourself. You have a really healthy relationship within your own emotions. You're able to assess and then take action steps to support your nervous system. When you can do that, you can then help your child. Because if you don't do that, you're going to want to, here, somebody else fix them. And then when you really get this right, you realize they don't need fixing, because your behavior and your your behavior, your reactivity is happening exactly predictably correct for the state that you're in. If you don't understand what to do with the states, how are you gonna be able to help the kid? So that's the first thing, understanding the nervous system. The second thing that you're called to do is, this is going to be a weird one, but it's called heal the projection. What do I mean by heal the projection? That's kind of weird, isn't it? Heal the projection. What do I mean by that? It's kind of spooky when a parent comes in and in our community is like, I'm having trouble with my 15-year-old. Like, oh, okay. What's going on? Well, they're having suicidal thoughts, and I'm really scared and anxious and nervous and da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay, cool. So then we start working with them, and they start doing the work, and they realize, what do you think they realize? Boom. There's a projection happening of an unresolved attachment wound, of an unresolved part of themselves, of an unhealed part of themselves at 15 that their child is now acting out. And this is one of the spookiest things. This is why when you study trauma and working on healing trauma, you can't help but move from a neurophysiological perspective to more of a spiritual one. That's why most neuroscientists who've been at the game for decades start to become a little more wooey and spiritual. And this is definitely what's happening to me, although I haven't lost my, planting my foot in and grounding in science. But these wounds that we go through in childhood that we haven't really been taught how to have completion for and to work through, we think that the past is behind us. Then all of a sudden our kid starts to act out with the exact, tell me if this lands or resonates for you. I'd love to hear if this resonates for you. Write it in the comment section, that you're looking at your kid having a tough time. See how old they are, and then ask yourself this question: what was I going through at that same age? What was I going through? Well, it turns out Heidi, that when she started working with us to help heal the relationship within herself and her son, which then caused a complete turnaround in his life, she realized that she was looking at a 14-year-old version of herself that she was totally ashamed of, that she dismissed, that she denied, that she actually hates. And the parts of us that we hate, that we can't stand, why is it that we see it again in our future, in our partner, in our relationships, in our children? Well, in kind of like the spiritual kind of wooey way, there are parts of us that we haven't loved, that we've disowned. And the parts that have disowned, we have fragmented from. And our purpose on this planet Earth, is where souls come to evolve. And part of our evolution is to rescue and reconnect with the parts of us that we have disowned, and we've cast away, and we've thrown into the gutter, banished, hoping we would never see. Guess what? They start showing up in our kids. And so the best thing that our students have found that have been so helpful in actually getting results in helping the child didn't involve the child actually going and doing any therapy. In fact, quite the opposite. They did their own work and they healed the projection. When they got that right, immediately they connected with the younger parts of themselves that they disowned, and they were able to empathize with their children. And the child felt seen, felt heard, felt understood, which leads me to the third point. This is what we teach in our trainings, is to share the journey with them. Sharing the journey is sharing the inward journey of going inward and healing with the younger parts of them. Then you approach the child and say, hey, son, what you're going through, initially, I just went through a whole, you saw dad completely overreact. Dominic, let me give you an example if I'm talking to my own son. Dominic, when you were caught at school with, weed, for example, let's say he's only 18 months. I seriously hope he doesn't get caught at the community center with weed right now. But anyway, let's say he's 14 years old and, at a time where it wasn't appropriate, and he brings up stuff that brings up parts of me that I'm really ashamed of. I have the capacity to first react and freak the fuck out like any other parent would, and to be able to go in and create a resolution with the younger parts of myself that I haven't yet had completion with. And once that journey is gone, of reconciliation through the overview method, which is the methodology that I teach my students, then I can share the journey with Dominic and say, it reminded me of a time when so-and-so, and this is what I was feeling, so I understand you. And so I come at him within a relationship. And that's what we've been teaching our students, and it really works. And by works, it means the child feels understood. The child doesn't feel blamed and judged. The child doesn't feel like there's something wrong with them, because the medical system, psychotherapy and all that, when they're not trauma-informed, medicine, they try to convince you that there's something wrong with you. And every time the child is taking a pill, it's a reinforcement that, oh, something's wrong with me. I have this disorder, which then makes the parent feel good is like, oh, fine, good. It's the kid has the disorder. It couldn't be me being a bad parent. No, I'm not suggesting that you're being a bad parent. I'm suggesting our unresolved wounds get unconsciously downloaded by the most well-meaning parents to the children. And that's what creates this lack of safety in the family dynamic. And you're a lot more powerful than you think. And so let me know if any of these methodologies, this new way, my intention is to reframe the concept for you, to actually give you something that gives results and outcomes that are tangible, rather than just keeping them every 6 months going and tinkering their medication. Why not actually do something that creates complete transformation? Now, the biggest obstacle is everybody in essence really wants to help, but the biggest obstacle is that you're not going to want to do it. In fact, I've worked with, and there's one that I have in mind, this one beautiful woman who has a son who's got mental health issues. Your biggest obstacle is that you're going to want to help them, and you're going to be so preoccupied with them that you're going to go back to your old patterns of abandoning yourself. See, the child is actually holding a mirror and a reflection of parts of you haven't healed with. And this is common in codependency. There's a preoccupation with abandoning and fixing and rescuing. And so just like this was her challenge in this process, it might be your challenge as well, is that the one thing stopping you from healing this is the one reason why you must heal it, which is a preoccupation with fixing other people. So that'll be something you're going to have to look out for. You're going to say, I want to help them. And then you're going to go inward, but then kind of like in codependent relationships, where the codependent person who really wants to do the work can't stop obsessing about pointing fingers and going, yeah, but what about them? Look at their behavior. That's going to be your biggest obstacle, especially if you teeter towards a deep codependency. That's what I'm warning you to watch out for, because it just feels safer to avoid our own inward journey and just point fingers there, when there's deeply shameful, hurt, younger parts of ourselves, what we call in our shadows, that are begging to be reunited and brought home. But we're going to ignore those parts in service of fixing outside, just like we did for mom and dad, just like we did for our partner, just like we do for the person we're dating, just like we do for our kids. And then we completely lose sight of the one thing that's going to actually transform everything, which is an inward journey, understanding of a nervous system, healing the projection, understanding the nervous system, healing the projection, and learning how to share that journey with intimacy. Intimacy is really how it heals. The intimacy within the relationship of a parent and child, that we block because we're trying to be perfect and trying to do what, the church taught us, or whatever story that we're trying to perform. The teenager sees right through it and can't stand your bullshit, and wants to have leadership as a parent. The greatest gift you can give to a struggling child is a self-loving parent. And it's the one thing you will resist the most because of your own woundings. It's ironic, and it drives me sometimes a little bit insane, but I have compassion towards parents who deeply want to help their kid, but they don't get that the only way that the child is going to be helped is if you pretend you want to rescue yourself as badly as you rescue that child. See, the child takes the precedent, right? But what you don't get is that it's like a plane that's about to crash, and the oxygen masks come on. And that's why the rules, they say, put yours on first before putting the child's on. Well, the world is full of mothers who are putting the child's mask on first while they themselves are drowning, not really realizing that their survival stress is spilling onto the child. And if you just focus on learning, especially moms, especially single moms, learning and mastering these tools, you can have a profound impact on yourself, on your children, on relationships, leave relationships that aren't healthy for you, attract people and groups of friends that are in a new level that see you and understand you, that you don't have to perform for anymore. And so that's really why I love teaching this, because there's a lot at stake. Your family's health, your health, chronic illness, it just gets passed down because of unresolved trauma, and without really talking about it and owning it and being courageous, not taking blame, but to be able to stand up and go, I'm willing to break the cycle. That's how it breaks. And so if this is resonating with you, let me know. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is in this conversation. And for those of you who really are keen, who are super duper stoked about this and want to take that first step, it's not going to happen overnight. Please understanding your nervous system and learning how to heal the projections is a system that I've come up with. And so the best place to begin is to understand these unresolved attachment traumas that get spilled over to our children, is to really get a firm connection with those shadow parts of ourselves, the wounded child within ourselves. And that's why I created the event called Breathwork and Badassery. It's an experience, actually, in where I guide you. Imagine a 4-hour container where I'm taking you through your childhood, and you're getting these little activations and memories come up. Some of them painful, some of them really pleasurable. Both sides come up, and you're led into a meditation, where a neural exercise where you connect with this younger part, and then get led into a breathwork session where we uncover some of these hidden ones, small t traumas, for the purpose of helping you move it through the body. It's super critical if you're a busy mom, super critical if you are busy entrepreneur, super critical if you yourself deal with anxiety or your children are dealing with it, that you break the cycle by doing something radical, which is creating a safe container for yourself, a sacred pause to take all of the emotions pre and post COVID, the relational dynamics that have been shot because of it, mental health issues that have been rising to the surface because of it, and to have a space where you can actually move that through your body, and to be in a community that's involved and engaged in a conversation of healing, not about blaming, not about shaming, but about really owning, taking ownership for. And it's filled with parents who feel that they fucked up. It's filled with children who wish that their parents did the work. It's filled with people that are learning how to heal their attachment wounds so that they can create secure dynamics and break the cycles of intergenerational trauma. If you're super duper keen, I know that I can see there's several people here that are already signed up. I can't wait to guide you. It's one of my most favorite events. It's on Saturday. If you're watching the replay, follow the link below and jump in and join us. It's a start. It's a start of the journey of breaking that cycle. It's not the end of the journey. It's a beginning. And if there's many people after experiencing that have such a profound insight that they now know exactly how to help their kid. They know how to help themselves. They know how to connect to purpose. They know now what to do to emotionally regulate. And they go all in with the education of mastering their nervous system. And so that's really why I do what I do, because I want to help break cycles and I stand for healed families. So the invitation for anyone is to jump in. The link is in the bio for Breathwork and Badassery if you are on Instagram or Clubhouse. And if you are watching this on Facebook Live or on replay, the link is below. Let me know what questions you have, and I will be happy to do another training. Make sure you subscribe. See you at the next perfect time.